If you've ever thought about having a VBAC, but then you mention it to somebody and they immediately respond to you with something like, "What? Are you serious? That's so dangerous." I don't think that's a good idea. You're not alone. I was in those exact same positions when I decided to have my VBAC with my second child and had to work through all of the noise of, is a VBAC safe? Is this the best option for me? What if I have a repeat section? What if this happens? What if that happens? Mama, there's so much noise out there that could really make you doubt or question whether a VBAC is right for you. In this video, I want to talk about 5 benefits of having a VBAC rather than a repeat C-section and give you the confidence and tools that you need to embark on this journey that most people around you probably don't even think is possible. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel for the first time. My name is Chanel. I am a mama of 3, wife, and a doula, and I have experienced pretty much every type of birth, from an emergency C-section to a home birth where my son was literally born in our driveway. So I've taken all the knowledge and experiences that I have had personally and with my clients to give you the most practical, evidence-based, real information that you need to have the most positive and empowering and beautiful birth experience that you deserve. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below so that you will get notified of videos that come out every single week to make sure that you are prepared for your birth experience and motherhood journey. All right, so today we're diving into a topic that is near and dear to my heart. That is having a vaginal birth after cesarean, better known as a VBAC. I am a VBAC mama myself, proud VBAC mama, and proud C-section mama at that. It was an emergency, it was not planned, but had I not gone through that experience, I wouldn't be able to sit here and talk to you today about why VBACs are so possible and how to have a positive C-section if you are in that situation or if you have to have a repeat C-section. There's so many things I did not know about having a C-section the first time around that I wish I would have known. And there's so many things about VBACs that I've learned over the process and the journey of preparing for a VBAC that so many women do not know and deserve to know. Because if they understood those pieces of information rather than just taking what other people are telling them or what they're reading online that probably isn't even evidence-based, I'm pretty sure you or anybody else who's preparing for a VBAC would have a completely different perspective and mindset about embarking on this journey that honestly is probably more realistic and safer for you and your baby than a repeat C-section, unless that's medically necessary. But I assume if you're watching this video, you are probably a good candidate for a VBAC, and so that's why you're trying to learn more about it. And mama, I'm proud of you for that. Now, pregnancy is already a roller coaster of emotions. We go from being excited to being scared to being overwhelmed to being emotional to being tired to being energized. Like, there's so many different things that happen in the course of the pregnancy. But with all of that, I want you to remember at the end of the day, regardless of how your birth story turns out, you got this. You got this. You're capable. Your body was made for this. So just understand at the end of the day, your job is to be educated and prepared. Your baby's job is to lead you to get them here safely. And when you can learn how to be in alignment with your mind, your body, your spirit, and your baby, it works so well. The rhythm is so beautiful, and it makes going towards a VBAC even more special and more beautiful because it's probably something that we might not have had that first time around. Or if we did have that the first time around, maybe we have to do that again and trust ourselves again to go on a journey that is completely new, does not have to be compared to the last experience, and deserves a clear and clean slate. Now, before we dig in, I want to just talk a little bit more about my C-section experience with healing and my VBAC experience. As most of you know, if you're watching this video, you understand how challenging it can be to not only be in a C-section situation, but then recover from a C-section. It was really difficult. I had a really difficult time just understanding how this whole thing happened. I did all of what I thought I was supposed to do, which if you follow me on Instagram or TikTok, you would know that I didn't know that much. I thought I knew a lot of things. I didn't hire a doula. I didn't take any childbirth education classes outside of the one at the hospital, which was trash. It didn't really prepare me, let me just say that. And I just relied like on my physical strength to get me through birth, and that was just not enough. And having had a lack of preparation and knowledge, that really impacted my postpartum experience, because I did not really know how to process a lot of the things that had happened in my birth. The physical recovery was really tough, and I had to do a lot of birth trauma healing just to like be in the place to know that I was going to pursue this VBAC. So like, it's really important to do any healing that you need to do from your C-section first. Even if you find out you're pregnant, like really start with that in your first trimester, is like healing and working through your birth trauma, whether it be from a therapeutic standpoint, a spiritual standpoint, talking about it with your partner, whatever that looks like. But it's really important to start that healing journey now, whether you're pregnant or you're not, to be able to give yourself an opportunity, in your body an opportunity to go to this birth, not relying or operating out of a place of trauma, because it will show up again if you do not work through it. And so when I did end up having my VBAC, that was where I had to really start. I knew that I had to heal, and I had a postpartum doula that was really helpful in that process in the beginning. And then I did hire a doula the second time around to just really make sure that I was in a position that would allow me to have the right support system in place when I did have those difficult moments. But in the beginning, it was really about educating myself, going through natural birth classes with people, doulas, childbirth educators who had done or supported women to do the things that I wanted to do, which was VBACs. I am so grateful that I had a doula who had worked with mamas who had VBACs, and then also I was at a birth center with midwives who have supported VBACs all the time. So that was a really huge help in preparing for my VBAC. And then when I had my VBAC, the little bits of that trauma started to creep up, like, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna be able to do this again. This is so long. Why is this so difficult? Like all the things. And I realized that like maybe I didn't do as much healing as I should have done, but it was one of the most empowering experiences that I've ever had. More empowering really than my third birth. My third birth was still my favorite birth, but my second birth was a true redemptive experience. That VBAC was so redemptive for me spiritually, emotionally, physically, like all of the things that I wish that I would have known the first time around. Like it just gives me chills even thinking about how powerful that moment is and how powerful that moment can be for you. So that's my story. Maybe it wasn't so brief, but that's my story. And I want to dive into 5 benefits of having a VBAC rather than a repeat C-section, and how you can have this redemptive experience too. So the first benefit that I want to talk about is the emotional empowerment that comes from having a VBAC. As you could probably sense from the story that I just shared, having a VBAC is so empowering. You get to show and prove to yourself and others, if you care to even, give anybody else the time of day for their own opinion. But it is a true, empowering, redemptive experience. There's so much that goes into preparing for birth, whether this is your first time or your second time. But if you're on this video and you're watching this video, this could possibly be your first vaginal birth. And so this is so important because you're doing something for the first time. And when you do something that you've worked really, really hard for, and you have experiences that could make you really afraid of doing that thing, it means so much more to you rather than just doing something for the first time and knocking it out of the park. Like you are coming from a completely different perspective than a first time mama. And so there is a physical aspect that is obviously beneficial that we'll talk about when it comes to having a VBAC over a repeat C-section, but the emotional and spiritual and mental power and redemption and empowerment that comes from doing this and having this successful VBAC that you're probably going to work really, really hard for. It's not like just having a vaginal birth go the way that you want it to the first time around. Like you still work hard in every birth, right? But it's different. It's so different. And there's a experience. There is a feeling. There is a sense of power that comes from having a VBAC that like I stayed on cloud 9 24 months. My VBAC is what like catapulted me into this role as a doula, because I fell in love with birth and what our bodies are capable of. And it's just something that, like, if you're not a VBAC mama, you don't get it. But it's so powerful, and the emotional experience that comes from that is just like something that you'll never experience outside of doing this thing on your own. The second benefit of having a VBAC over a repeat C-section is the recovery time. It is so much faster to have a VBAC and recover from a VBAC than it is to have a repeat cesarean. As you probably remember from your C-section, it is hard. It is hard to recover. It is hard to walk for a while. It is hard to do anything because everything you do stems from that core where your incision is. When I tell you that I felt like $1 trillion after my VBAC, I mean, it was night and day. And I just like pushed a whole watermelon out of a bagel hole. Like, you would think that would probably be kind of hard. And I did tear the second time around. And even with my tear, I was like, I got this. Like, I got this. This is easy. And I still had to like be responsible and recover and be on bed rest because that's how your body heals. But you feel like $1 trillion after having a vaginal birth, after your cesarean, because you know what it's like to like be forcefully on bed rest, not because you're just trying to heal, but because like you can't do much. You can't lift much because everything hurts. You can't laugh. You can't cough. You can't sneeze. Like, you can do all those things with a VBAC so much faster. Like, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculously amazing. Okay, so quicker recovery time is the probably easiest, most beneficial benefit to having a VBAC. Benefit number 3 is a reduced risk of complications. One thing that most people do not realize when it comes to having a repeat C-section over a VBAC is that you're having another major abdominal surgery. And there are complications that can come from that, like blood clotting, like infection, like damage to different organs, like your bladder. There's so many different things and complications that can come from having a repeat C-section. So when you do go and opt for a VBAC, truthfully, if you really look at the statistics, it's actually safer to have a vaginal birth after a cesarean, or at least attempt a vaginal birth after a cesarean, than to just operate and go straight into the operating room to have a repeat C-section. Now, this is not everybody's style, it's not everybody's choice, and that's totally fine. But it is important to understand that sepsis and other different infections and complications can come from repeating this procedure. And it's so important to know that ahead of time, because I think sometimes there's this narrative out there that VBACs are so dangerous. But truthfully, if you are an eligible candidate, which most of us tend to be, as long as it wasn't like so emergent that they had to do a vertical incision, if you have a low transverse incision and you've had approximately 12 or 18 months in between your pregnancies, you can have a VBAC and you're a good candidate for a VBAC. And it's probably safer for most of us to have a vaginal birth over a C-section for the risk of complications that can come from just literally cutting through 7 layers of skin and muscle to pull your baby out through your stomach. Now, if that's not your preference, you probably don't need to watch any more of this video. But I assume if you're here, you're wanting to know how to have a VBAC and if it's possible. The other thing that I want you to understand is that VBACs are also possible after more than one cesarean. It does get more complicated to find a provider who will support you, but I have supported a mama who has had 2 C-sections and she had a vaginal birth on her 3rd birth. And there is a mama who I'm working with right now who's had 3 C-sections, who's working towards having her VBAC as her 4th birth. So it is possible to find providers. There are few, especially when it comes to OBs, but there are providers out there who understand like your body is fully capable of recovering and healing. And yes, there are increased risks of things like uterine rupture with a VBAC under certain circumstances. And if you understand those circumstances like induction, then we probably just don't want to go down that road. So understanding and being educated on these risks is important, but really the benefit of having a VBAC is that it is actually statistically safer than having a repeat C-section. Now, the fourth benefit to having a VBAC over a repeat C-section is bonding and breastfeeding. There is so much that can happen when you have a vaginal birth, not only for your breastfeeding journey, but also the bonding that happens with your baby. There is a different kind of connection that I experience with my second and my third just coming through vaginally. And of course, I still have that connection and did have that connection with my first. I don't want to confuse anybody that like you don't have a connection if you had a C-section, but there is a difference. And you do feel the difference when you birth your baby vaginally, and the bond that comes through you and your baby working together to do that than just having a C-section. And the love is no less, but it does have a different experience. And when it comes to breastfeeding, having that baby come through vaginally, it does improve the opportunity and the ability for you to have a more successful or quicker breastfeeding journey. So it is important to understand that when your body births a baby vaginally, something happens, it triggers some hormones to start to produce milk. And when you have a C-section, we don't have those triggers because our baby didn't go through that birth canal. And yes, your body will still produce the milk, but sometimes it can take a little bit longer. And sometimes breastfeeding can be a little bit more challenging for your baby because of just the ways that the hormones work and ways that our bodies work when it comes to latching, producing, and even bonding for that first immediate postpartum experience. And benefit number 5 is really personalizing and having a unique and redemptive birth experience. With a C-section, a lot of times we didn't really play a role in that, in the sense that we didn't have much control potentially over what that experience and that journey looked like. Now, depending on what your first birth or your previous birth looked like with the C-section, maybe it was your decision. Maybe you did schedule the C-section. Who knows? And it's also not super relevant at this point. But what I can say is that when you do opt for a VBAC and you're pursuing this VBAC, you can reclaim a sense of control. You can go through the birthing process either for the first time or again, having more knowledge, having more confidence, having more support, and trusting your body at a different level than you probably did before. And there's something so special and unique about really pursuing something of this magnitude with a community and a society who thinks that it's so taboo to do, and it makes it feel so much more meaningful because you're doing something that hopefully spiritually you're aligned with and that you feel trusting to do, but you're also trusting your baby and your body on another level. And that, and playing a role in that experience is something that is so unique and powerful and makes this whole birth experience so much more special. It makes it so much more involved and engaged for you and for your support person that you write the story. And even if it ends in a repeat C-section, you still write that story. And for a lot of us in the first birth, I'll speak for myself, maybe not all of us, but for me, I felt out of control in my first birth. I felt so robbed of my birth experience because I was rushed into a operating room. Well, it wasn't really rushed, but I was taken to an operating room and kind of at the hands of whatever was going on behind the sheet. And I loved being able to be the first hands on my baby. I loved being able to just trust myself, trust God on a different level, and realize that this thing is possible and that I did have the opportunity to play a role in that. And even if it did end in a C-section, that it was my choice and that it was my decision. And I didn't feel like that was the case the first time around. I agreed to it and consented to it, but it was more out of fear than out of confidence. And so I do believe that even pursuing, even if your birth doesn't end in the way that you want it to end, just having some sense of knowledge and control and say in your birth experience makes it that much more meaningful. Remember, this is your journey, and whatever you desire for your experience, make sure that your path aligns with getting you there. The people align with getting you there. The education aligns with getting you there. The affirmations, the scriptures, the support, the environment supports you on getting to the birth that you desire, because you are capable of having the birth of your dreams. If you are planning on having a VBAC, share your questions or thoughts in the comments below. And to all you incredible mamas out there, embrace the experience, embrace the process, embrace the journey. Know that this story is about to be written by you. I will see y'all in the next video.